everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We certainly do appreciate your participation. And as Emily said, today we're going to review what is new in AVST CXE 8.2. Version 8.2 has in fact had 3 releases in the past 12 months, excuse me, each of which included significant features or capabilities. For example, the original release last November introduced app technology for handheld devices. Software Update 1 earlier this year included integration with Microsoft's Lync, along with other enhancements. And the currently shipping version SU2, released in August, gave us the ability to virtualize the CX system server, and we've also increased maximum capacities of the CXE, which we'll talk about a little bit later. In today's session, we're going to cover the most significant changes to version 8.2. The first is a big step for AVST in making it possible to now virtualize the system server by using VMware's Direct Path I/O mapping, which accommodates the USB software security dongle. Based on increased hardware resources, we've been able to increase the previous capacity of CX to 500 ports. In SU2, we released support for the Android's Jelly Bean, otherwise known as the newest Android operating system, version 4.x. Also in SU2, we now ship a couple of UCConnect free sample applications that can in fact be run on your CX. And finally, we now offer the user the ability to reset their own mailbox security code through a self-service web browser portal known as the Web Phone Manager, which can in fact unlock the mailbox if the user happened to have locked themselves out by failed attempts to log into their own mailbox. So that was actually a big enhancement moving forward there. So let's talk about virtualization. For those of you that might not be familiar with what virtualization is, let's stop here and explain in a minute. Look at the image to the right, if you will. You see a bunch of smaller servers sort of superimposed over one bigger, larger server. That's in fact what virtualization is, where the resources of a hardware platform or server has the capability of actually running individual virtual images of servers and their applications on top of that same platform. So think of it as a bunch of little servers inside of one big, better server. What's recently happened with Software Update 2, we announced VMware Ready status, which means the folks at VMware have put the CX through their certification process in order to get their industry stamp of approval for applications that can run in a virtual environment. For those of you who are familiar with VMware nomenclature, the CXE is supported on ESX version 4.0 and higher, as well as ESXi version 4.1 and higher, and is what is specifically required for virtualizing the system server. As a note, we also now support dual VMware host configurations, which is typically set up and used in conjunction with a storage area network, otherwise known as a SAN. In this scenario, to bring up a secondary or backup host, assuming the production host has crashed, one would have to move the CXE USB security dongle I mentioned a minute ago to the new backup VMware platform. To eliminate having to actually be at these servers to physically make that move, a dual VMware host dongle can be purchased from AVST. As of 8.2, Software Update 2, CXE can now grow to a total of 500 ports. That's a 30% increase over the previous capacity. Call servers can now grow without speech to 144 ports per call server, and with speech to 96 ports per call server. We achieved this increase due to new QA testing and a new hardware platform release. Using a Dell R720 server, which we recently added to the line of servers provided by AVST is how we accomplished this testing. Considering the discussion on capabilities and scalability, let's review why CXE is an ideal solution for a private cloud. For those of you who may not have joined us in previous discussions before this one on the CXE's distributed architecture, what you see here is the ability to centralize call services in a main site or data center, distribute call services to remote locations, or in fact do both, which is really a hybrid of these two strategies to accommodate your organization's needs. Drilling down a little further, let's be sure everyone understands the architecture. On the right, you see the system server. This is the brains of the operation, the central database and message store, and where admin changes are made. To the left are the call servers. These guys are the workhorses. They're the ones that are actually integrated to the telephony infrastructure, be that IP or TDM based, where the applications are run, where in fact you're interacting over the telephone with CX via the telephone user interface or the voice user interface. The CX supports up to 20 call servers in a single CXE environment. Hopefully what you've gleaned from this is your advantages of having multiple call servers in your environment. First, from an obvious point of view, visually here, you've eliminated a single point of failure. High availability is possible now because you've distributed or diversified your ports over multiple call servers. So should any one of those call servers fail, all you've done is lost some capacity, but the CX continues to operate independently. And in fact, each of these call servers operate independently. They don't require each other to be up and active, nor do they require the system server to be active. So there's no loss of any of the application functionality on each one of these call servers should they be running different applications. But the best thing about this all is that we'll no longer, as you would have in a single point of failure, provide ring no answer or busy tone in a down server condition, because with multiple call servers we'll always be answering the phone, transferring calls, and taking messages. So just to round it back out to talk about today's maximum capacity for the CXE, we've reached a 500 port maximum capacity on one single CX system, which of course could be multiple servers, or would have to be multiple servers to reach 500 ports. 40,000 users, 20,000 of which can be users, or a total of 20 call servers on a single system. And again, as we mentioned before, based on whether or not you're employing speech or not, a capacity for a single call server can be 144 ports or 96 if you are using speech. What's interesting about the fact that you have these multiple call servers, or the option to deploy multiple call servers, is that in fact you can integrate to a variety of PBX manufacturers as well as integration types. And so these call servers could be placed around the building, around the state, or across the country if that were the geography of your organization. And you could integrate up to 10 different kinds of PBXs, or use 10 different integrations on a single system. So referring back to the agenda, we also talked about some applications that are now shipping with SU2 version 8.2, having to do with UCConnect. But let's take a minute and talk about what UCConnect is for those of you who might not be aware. It's an add-on module for the CXE and or CXS that allows quick creation of advanced auto attendant and custom voice applications. With UCConnect, you can connect to your voice applications to back-end databases and provide 24/7 access to information and services over the telephone. So typical application that you might think of would be banking by phone. That's what essentially the type of application you can build using UCConnect. Although with our web API, which we'll talk about a little bit later, there's some other options there for customization as well. So since the release of SU2, we now ship 2 free sample UCConnect applications that can be run on the Call Express. Of course, you'll need the UCConnect module to accommodate that. The first is Dynamic Call Routing, which is a very interesting app because it now allows callers to be routed based on the caller ID. And that caller ID, of course, needs to be transmitted to us via the integration from the PBX. But assuming that we get that, and or perhaps some caller-provided input, DTMF input over the phone, or language, or what time of day, or day of week, or what have you, depending on the variations of your application, we can make decisions on what to do with that call and where to transfer that call, or perhaps different treatment for that call based on that type of information. Another application known as System Info or System Information is really sort of an internal use type of an application that could probably be used, let's say, at a larger organization where help desk personnel are expected to go out to see users for defective phones and things of that nature, and not being sure in a large organization where you are or if you're at the right phone, you can actually call into this app and it would provide you, the caller, some information about exactly what you're calling from, what extension, where it is, etc. So that would be a nice type of application to be able to use internally. Now, each of these applications, of course, could be expanded upon as well to deliver or provide the functionality that your organization needs. And again, they're free of charge. They ship with version 8, now with SU2, as of the SU2 release. And the code is actually delivered along with that, so that if you were to decide to customize these even further, you have the ability to do so. However, you would need the UCConnect module. So if you were to go up to AVST.com after this presentation, and in the upper right-hand corner of the main page, search the website using the keywords real world, you would get this data sheet that describes real-world applications that we've developed using the UCConnect module and our web services API. It's important to note that these applications can be run on the very same CX platform you've acquired or considering acquiring for voice messaging, call processing, and traditional things such as that, or perhaps delving into unified communications. And what this means is that you're leveraging the investment you've made in software and hardware in the CX platform to provide additional services and add value without having to invest in yet another system that does this sort of thing. So there are great economies of scale to be brought to bear based on using it in this way. So speaking of AVST Mobile, in 8.2 we introduced mobile apps for the popular smartphones in the marketplace. Obviously the use of these apps and the CX Mobile service are consistent with building a UC strategy by taking advantage of technology to improve performance and productivity. So let's go over some of these bullets now in detail. These apps were written in code native to each of the operating systems of Android and iPhone. And what that means is that the user will find the interface familiar and easy to use because they were developed specifically for these OSs. What you'll find unique about AVST's mobile apps is that they fit in very nicely in support of a corporate bring-your-own-device policy, otherwise known as a BYOD, by keeping separate what is business and what is personal. Using the mobile client and the back-office functionality of the CX Mobile service, we can accommodate both the user's personal requirements as well as the company's requirements for using personal smartphones for business needs. So adopting a single number reach paradigm is truly what unified communications is all about. One number to reach me anywhere, on any device, at any time. This is how we can separate what is business and what is personal. And regardless if I'm working from my home office or the Starbucks in whatever city I'm in, I can conduct business as usual by adjusting my availability settings to make it easy for business contacts to reach me. Many organizations are moving towards some sort of a policy on the use of cell phones and smartphones, as we've been talking about, but they may not have a solution for getting around publishing the user's personal cell phone number. So to overcome this, we can add the cell phone to the list of devices a user can be reached on, and adopting that single number reach policy that we talked about a minute ago, we can accommodate the corporate requirements for a BYOD while not having to publish the user's personal cell phone number. Now, what's different about the CX Mobile service and the AVST Mobile app as opposed to some of the other solutions in the marketplace is that first we provide inbound call notification to the app on the user's smartphone rather than just transferring the call directly to the phone. But more importantly, we'll also include caller ID of that inbound call rather than the caller ID of the company that's transferring the call. In fact, in a UM deployment where we're integrated with Exchange, for example, we can present contact information from your corporate personal contacts, giving you additional information about the call, allowing you to make a more intelligent decision on what to do with the call. In this scenario, I could be walking into an appointment and see that I'm getting a call from a very important customer, but I have to make this appointment. It's 5 till, and I've got to be in the room in a couple of minutes, so I can acknowledge the call by saying, you know, thank you, Mr. Smith, for calling. I really appreciate your call, but unfortunately I'm headed into a meeting. Why don't you drop me a message, let me know what this call is about so I'm more informed when I get back to you. I hang up, go into my meeting, and Mr. Smith is thrilled to know that he got some personal courtesy there and goes about leaving me a message, so we can have more of a productive engagement today rather than him leaving me just plain old voicemail and then I try and get him back if I remember to do so. And one way to get around that is a copy of that acknowledgement is actually dropped in my mailbox to remind me to give him a call back. So there's a lot of additional value in the way in which we send a call to the mobile client based on the fact that we're providing good information to help a user decide what he's going to do with that call. So just as important, probably more important in terms of supporting a BYOD, but in this scenario is what happens when making an outbound call. And in support of a bring your own device program, personally, I don't want to expose my personal cell phone number to my business contacts. So the best way to accommodate that is by actually using the CX and through the mobile app to make the call. And in that case, what my called party will get is my corporate caller ID, not my personal cell phone caller ID. I mentioned before about being able to adjust my availability, and that's just one of the things that's included in this clever app where we can manage personal settings not dependent on where you are at any given time or having to call into the system or get out your laptop and connect and get online in order to make availability settings or changes. On top of that, we can adjust our voicemail greetings and mailbox settings, notifications, and things like that right through the app. Additionally, if in the off chance you're not able to take a call that's come to you by way of the CX, voicemail messages will be available for your listening pleasure right through the app as well without having to call in the office to listen to these messages. So if you like, you can go up to either one of Google or Apple's app stores and download these apps right now. They're free of charge. Naturally, they won't work without setting up the CX Mobile service along with a CXE system back at the office. But by downloading them, you'll be able to get a real close view of just how smart these apps are. Now, in line with the announcements of the 8.2 releases, we can offer OCS or link users the ability to make and take calls directly from their desktop clients without having to displace the existing PBX infrastructure. Essentially, a soft phone for whatever PBX is in place. Now, how this is done is by implementing AVST's intelligent gateway on the CX. By virtue of the fact that the CX is currently integrated to whatever PBX is in place, this intelligent gateway is set up as another integration with Link. Link doesn't know or care where it's getting its dial tone from and can easily be set up to make and take calls directly from the desktop. As we round out this presentation, we want to remind you about the strength that AVST's CX has in terms of its telephony interoperability. We've spent a great deal of time and effort and money in our ability to integrate with a variety of PBXs and telephony infrastructures that are out there, whether they're legacy and TDM-based with physical connections or they're IP-based. And Centrex, of course, as well, is probably the most legacy-based voice system that we can think of. And finally, to finish out the agenda, the security reset code that we mentioned and is a part of the Web Phone Manager logon screen. If you've not deployed Web Phone Manager, you might be interested in doing that. It doesn't require any additional licenses outside of a experience, but it does give your user community a self-service portal for adjusting their mailbox settings, etc. And now probably one of the biggest calls or the highest volume calls to the help desk regarding voicemail is about, hey, I've forgotten my password to my mailbox. Now you can refer them to the web portal and they be able to solve that problem all on their own. And with that, folks, we come to the end of our presentation.
Okay, and Ed, it looks like we have a few questions.
Sure.
Okay, with the first one, this is on the mobile client. With the mobile client, where are the voicemail messages stored?
Well, that really, it depends on the decision that was made in terms of where messages can be stored, because there are some options there. If you're going to use the mobile client to access voice messages, then the voice messages must be on the CX. If that user chooses to be a server-based user where their messages would be delivered to Exchange, well then those voicemail messages would show up in their Exchange inbox, which ultimately would be delivered to the smartphone as well, but that experience would be outside of the AVST Mobile app.
Okay. Next question is, how does unified messaging work if I'm moving to the cloud?
Well, we support integration to cloud-based email systems through IMAP conventions, and we already have a tested integration to Office 365, which is essentially Exchange in the cloud. And not supposed to talk too much about futures, but in a coming release, we will have a full integration to Office 365, which would be not too dissimilar than a premise-based experience where message waiting lights and all that sort of stuff would work.
Okay. And it looks like we're having a lot more questions come in.
Okay.
So the next one is, can you still use 2 security dongles if your VMware environment is not using shared storage?
Sure, don't see why not.
Okay. The next one, is the AVST Mobile Services licensed separately from our VM licenses, and was it originally known as Personal Assistant?
Okay, let me see if I follow that question. So the mobile app requires a PA personal assistant license in order to be activated. There is no license for CX Mobile. It's simply a service that must be set up in the back office. In fact, is a web app service that runs on a web server, so you would probably typically put it on the same web server that you've installed Web Phone Manager on. So the app itself is free. To set it up for your office, you'd need to implement CX Mobile service, which there's no license for. But then to employ that mobile app, you'd need to give that user a PA license, a personal assistant license. I hope I explained that right.
Yeah,
well.
I think that answers that question well.
Okay, good.
The next question is the mobile server a service you turn on or a separate server?
So as a standard, we don't run web server software on the CX platform. So as with the Web Phone Manager, the CX Mobile service must be installed on a web server somewhere off of the CX platform. And it can be an existing one. It doesn't require a dedicated web server to do that. As I mentioned before, it could be on the same web server that you've installed Web Phone Manager on.
Okay. Next question, with the OCO integration, can the intelligent gateway tie into a shared environment, or is it a dedicated or is a dedicated server required?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand the question completely. There is no dedicated server required. Let me answer that. But basically what we're doing is integrating to the Link client, not so much the presence engine or the instant messaging engine behind that. That's actually step 2 and what we'll be introducing in a future release next year. But currently there's no dedicated server required.
Okay. Another question is, if a customer has unified messaging with Exchange, how is the mobile app useful?
Well, so from a unified messaging perspective, it might not be useful at all. It really comes down to whether or not the mobile users, certainly it makes more sense for mobile users than those that are more stationary. And if they are, let's say, salespeople, for example, or just people who travel a lot, or whether they're just traveling locally by car or train or subway, or they fly and they travel to other destinations, that mobile app comes in. For given an example, for me, I'm able to affect my availability and treat my callers with a great deal more courtesy by changing my availability based on whether or not I'll actually be able to take a call. Well, that whole experience that I just described is sort of outside unified messaging. That's really just about where I get my messages. And unified messaging usually suggests that I'm getting them in my email client, which happens to be tied to an email server, which if my voicemail is delivered there, well then it's available on my smartphone without having a mobile client. So it really depends on the user's requirements.
Right. Okay, and the next question is, can I get a copy of this presentation? And again, for anyone who wasn't on right in the beginning, yes, we do have the slides available, and everyone that has attended, you will receive an email with a download for the slides. And we also are recording this webinar, and once that's ready, we'll send out another email to all the attendees with the recorded webinar. It looks like we just have a couple more questions.
Okay. Sure.
Can a VMware deployed AVST be a single virtual machine with both system server and call services, or does each server need its own VMware virtual server?
Well, if you think about the fact, now the answer is relative to the kind of integration, number one, because to virtualize a call server, it must be an IP-based integration, because the TDM integrations require a physical board. So the answer to that would be no, you can't virtualize a call server. But we know that we can install a system server plus a call server on one single platform. And if it's IP-based, then the whole thing can be virtualized.
And we'd like to thank everybody again for your participation and for attending this webinar, and we definitely hope to see you on future AVST webinars. And Ed, would you like to add anything?
Other than I appreciate everyone's participation and look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.